that's what I've been hearing from various people that are, um, if people are dubious about what I'm saying, and I know TikTok wasn't banned, a bunch of these human smugglers are on TikTok, and they will get their clients doing testimonials on the U.S. side of like, hey, El Flaco just crossed me. He trusts him. He's a good guy, and they're in the U.S. And this is This is like recent, right? So it's still happening. It's not happening at the volume that it did before. I am going to say, and it's harder, or it seems to have the perception of being harder. That's why they're raising prices. Although some of the conversations that I've had with my contacts seem to tell me that they're just doing business as usual. They're just charging more because of the apparent difficulty of crossing, but they're still doing their thing as they normally do.
Wow, man, that's shocking. I know the numbers have dropped significantly since the Trump administration has taken office. And that's just in the areas that, are being detected and counted, right? There's obviously the border's porous, right? There's other ways of entering than just by walking or wading across the river. So I imagine your contacts are talking about things that could be tunnels, it could be flights, could be many other means of entry into America.
Yeah, I'm sorry, English is still my second language, although I speak it clearly. Identity theft is one of the big ones. Having a lookalike that has the same paperwork and you get rented out. Flights to Canada. A bunch of weird loopholes that people are kind of figuring out, and also and again, the volume is down, but people are still crossing. Is what I'm going to say, and drugs are still crossing as well. Again, a lot of the avenues into the United States for these substances have been in active use for longer than I worked. I got to find some of these tunnels, and they're pretty hard to find. Even with some of the investment in equipment and training and all the U.S. efforts to try and figure out where some of these tunnels are, they usually get found because of people getting stupid. But they're there. They're active.
They just found one in El Paso. Did you see that one?
Yep.
It was tall enough for a human to walk through.
Yeah, I've heard rumors and I've seen videos of some big enough to drive a truck through.
Holy smokes!
So I have no idea. I have no clue if these are legitimate or not. But why would, the flow is still going. Some of these organizations are still paying their people because there's no way you can, maintain a structure like that without being able to pay for it.
Yeah.
And I think if anything, the Sinaloa Cartel is the only one that I've seen basically disintegrating. But there's many other organizations out there that are still working on that border and still pushing the substances through.
Have you talked to any of your contacts recently about how they felt about being designated, a terrorist organization? Have you got wind of any of that yet?
Yes. So for context, I have trained and have friends that are still active across the field, both in special operations in Mexico. Also on the newly formed intelligence service with the federal police and Guardia Nacional, and just state and local police officers across that border and all over Mexico. And that's where I get a lot of my information. I've also just talked to people. I travel to Mexico regularly. I'm actually on my way to a pretty big event down in Mexico. What I've heard, the rhetoric that I hear from everybody is, number one, that designation has threatened the government more than it has threatened any cartel members. That is who is in fear of this designation, right?
Why is that?
Well, because a lot of these people that are currently in power had and have a lot of money behind them and backing behind them of institutions, companies, money men, middlemen who are cartel affiliated and funded. So they're aware that any sort of funding and support of that nature is going to come back and bite them in the ass. So they're afraid of the past. They're also very much aware that you, as a country, have a walking encyclopedia of who is corrupt and who isn't in the form of El Mayo Zambada. The going rhetoric within government circles is that we've already seen the first covert military operation by the United States in Mexico. And that was the arrest of El Mayo Zambada.
Really?
That is kind of the narrative in some of these circles, that this has already happened, that there's already been an intervention in Mexico. And if it was, I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but if it was, it was a pretty strategic and pretty devastating one for the Sinaloa Cartel, which historically has been the one that supported the current administration the most. So it's a conundrum for them. They're trying to figure out what is actually going on. The Sinaloa Cartel is disintegrating. They're at war with each other right now, and a lot of those blows have been dealt by El Mayo Zambada's arrest and the division it created within the historical federation of cartels that conform this area. And if you want another example of why the Guardia Nacional on that border doesn't mean shit, they're all over Sinaloa right now, and there's murders everywhere. So it's meaningless to have all these guys in those trucks moving around. You know, you have a weakened cartel, and also you have now an adoption of new methodologies. Yesterday, there was a bunch of chatter about this U.S. spy plane flying over the Gulf of California. People are dumping communications and changing ways of communicating. People are researching what the people interacted when the U.S. went over there to invade. So people are actively trying to figure out how to get around the U.S.'s ability to listen. So what I see is cartel forces and criminal groups, basically adapting and shifting their footprint. You don't see a lot of online posting anymore. Communications have shifted, and people are going underground and kind of in a wait and see pattern. And the whole notion of these large criminal organizations with these figureheads at the top I think it's going away. I mean, because some of these guys are basically going underground. But the drug is still flowing. There's still parts of Mexico where the government can't go.